Pretty please, can you tell me where I am? You, won't you say something? I need to get my bearings. I'm lost, and the shadows keep on changing.
Hello, my friends, and welcome back to IndieCent for our Halloween special. Denny will not be with... Of course. Danny will not be here tonight because I actually planned this episode in advance for a few months, and Danny was at a tricky time in her life at the time, so I didn't know when I would be able to record this episode with her. So instead I invited Joe over, who you may have heard in Heavy Storms a few times.
Hi.
And of course we have Elmo here.
I'm a ghost.
No, you're not. You're British.
That's
Basically
the same thing.
Similar levels of whiteness.
Anyways, I invited Joe over because I know he played today's topic. This is probably going to be one of the few times on the show we're going to talk about a major release, but it's such a weird release that I think we can get away with it. And that release, of course, is Alan Wake from 2009 on the Xbox 360. And Jesus, how did they get this made?
It took a long time and a lot of product placement.
I still can't believe this is real because I can accurately compare it to Homestuck.
And I'm sure you will.
They have a character named Mr. Scratch. Of course I'm going to compare it to Homestuck.
Well, Mr. Scratch is also a literary reference based on the Devil and Daniel Webster, but he was mostly taken up by fucking criminal minds.
Network TV. The most useless thing in existence.
Except for Hannibal.
For those of you who don't know, Alan Wake is a game made by Remedy Entertainment, the same people who brought you the Max Payne series, the first two games, not the third one that was very different. And this game, one of the major creatives behind it was Sam Lake, the writer for those two Max Payne games. And it's partly about his feelings about writing the Max Payne games, but we'll get into that later. For now, let's just go ahead and do our usual starting segment of what have you been playing, and I'll let Joe start us off this time.
Okay, well, first off, I have, the game series that only old people care about, which is the recently released Ys 8, Lacrimosa of Dana. The Ys series goes... Yeah, the Ys series goes back into the 80s with Falcom. They were originally people who made games on the PC, and then they made Sorcerian, and then they made the Dragon Slayer series, which contains a lot of weird games, like Vaxanadu is part of it, Trails of Cold Steel is part of it, and...
Yeah, I know of Trails of Cold Steel. That might be the only one I know.
Yeah. Vaxanadu was a Nintendo game, and it is related to Legacy of the Wizard for the Nintendo, and it's also related to all of these other games that Falcom made that were published by different people in the US, but their big keystone franchise, I want to say, is Ys, which is best known here in the late 80s. It was released as Ys Book 1 and 2 on the TurboGrafx CD.
I know what you're talking about now. I always pronounced it as Wise.
Yeah, the release we got in the US was they combined the two games wisely because 2 is a piece of shit. But anyway, they released it on the TurboGrafx CD, and it was so awe-inspiring because it was one of the first things anybody ever experienced with voice acting and live instruments used in video games. So you had this really clear narrator go, Ys, a wondrous civilization, or something like that. So that's how I know how to pronounce that. But so they had Wanders from Ys, which came out on the Super Nintendo, the Genesis, and the TurboGrafx CD. And then things got really murky for the franchise because they made 2 versions of 4 that aren't actually the official version in Japan. They never came out here, and they just skipped 5 because who the hell knows. But Konami published E6, and then Exceed came along and picked up a whole bunch of Falcom stuff and then released it from there. But now we have Ys 8, which was released by NIS America, and apparently the people from Exceed were very devastated about this. It's really weird because Exceed had been doing a wonderful job with Falcom. They've even been negotiating to get the soundtracks, get the special editions, and treat it pretty much really nicely. And they especially did that with their Trails in the Sky and Trails of Cold Steel series, where they made sure their translation was pristine, but they were visibly disappointed they didn't get it. And apparently NIS America didn't do the best job of translating, because this week they apologized for their translation and are patching it, because there are a bunch of little quirks. There's a listing on the soundtrack that says crevice of the Archaeozoic era, and in the official English translation, that's not the physical release of the Japanese soundtrack, it is called the Archaeozoic Big Hole. So
what is it with so many Japanese games being so poorly translated nowadays, and they're usually not small series either? I mean, even Persona 5 had problems.
Yeah. I don't know. I think what the Japanese want to do is they want to ally with as many Japanese companies as they can. That's my theory anyway, because NIS America obviously has a Japanese counterpart. Exceed does not. And I don't... their latest game they released was Tokyo Babylon. Not Tokyo Babylon. Tokyo Xanadu. Tokyo Babylon.
Oh yeah, I remember Kurt reviewed that and pointed out all the vague references it made to really old obscure games.
Yeah, there's a lot of them, but it was done by ASK. I don't know if they're Japanese or not, but Japanese companies are getting away from American branches, and for some reason, I don't know exactly what. My thing was they want to work with each other, and they don't particularly like it when the American branch has a high success that they don't particularly have. I read Console Wars, and Sega of Japan hated that Sega of America was a bigger success than they were. And the president of Sega of Japan, when Sega of America introduced their new console for kids, he literally smashed the console on his desk. So I don't know if that's just a political thing or what. But anyway, I have spent about 5 minutes talking about all the side things except the game, which is probably fitting because the Ys games are good. They are very solid, very tightly controlled games that you will play and have fun with for the 20 hours or so that you play them, and then you will immediately forget about them. They are nice enough, they are fun, and they have fantastic music because in the 80s, the Falcom sound team JDK, or whatever the initials were, once had they hired Yuzo Koshiro, who you might remember from the Streets of Rage 2. So that's kind of the place where he got his start. So this series has been known for great music. So it has really good music. The controls are really tight because it's action RPG. It's not as elaborate because it's easier. I remember Oath of Felghana, which was a remake of Ys 3, it's kind of best described as a bullet hell action RPG because the bosses would have so many patterns that would be devastating to you, and there was only one part where you could dodge or be in this right spot where you could avoid damage and hit, and this one's not that hard. I played it on normal and I only died twice, which is normally not the case. But it's an action RPG where you play as adventurer Adol Kristen, who is an adventurer, and he has red hair. That's all you ever get to know about him in the entire damn series that has spanned decades. It is this really damn weird thing, and I have theorized in the review I gave to Infinite Rainy Day and on Twitter that the man, after killing a couple gods, which he has, he got addicted to the entire experience, and the only reason he has one friend in Dogi, who is this giant guy who smashes things, is that Dogi is this enabler. So he is addicted to killing gods and getting the most powerful things in the... And that is what drives him, even though he, on the surface, he is a very nice man who gets along with everyone. Even though, even though every main woman he goes to on these quests falls in love with him, and he's just like, he moves on.
This is explaining a lot about how a lot of light novels, when they characterize a fantasy world, they always do it in terms of like adventurers and a demon king or something. And I never quite got that from like the JRPG series I knew, like Dragon Quest or Final Fantasy, but now I'm getting where they're getting it from.
Yeah, Ys is much bigger in Japan. I wouldn't say much bigger now, but it used to be. Mainly because we got the first 3 games, and then they skipped 2 sequels, so we forgot about it. And then when it came out on PS2, nobody cared.
My extent of my knowledge of this series is that the final boss theme in the 3rd game is really awesome.
Oh yeah. Okay, don't get me started, because. And in Oath of Volcana, it's extra awesome. It's just like the weird thing about that boss in the SNES version. It just looks like a really fat floating thing. It doesn't even look like that much of a threat, except if you touch it, it takes off half your life, and it's like, oh crap. So it's just this giant thing, and the only reason it's a threat is because it takes up so much space. It's hard not to run into it. But Oath of Volcana. Lacrimosa of Dana, the latest one, is pretty good. It falls along the same lines, except it has this extra main character in Dana who Adol dreams about, who she is this priest of their holy tree. And she sees visions of Adol walking through ruins of her civilization, and it's like, oh crap, what the hell happened? I've got to figure out what's going on here and stopping it. And then she shows up in Adol's time, and then she has visions about her going to the future, and she's like, what the hell is going on here? So, I mean, it goes from both ends of the past and the future, and Dana is a lot more interesting of a character because she is tiny for her civilization, and she's kind of an outcast who became their highest figure in their religion. So, I mean, she's interesting. She's still kind of bland because it's a generic JRPG, but it's a little bit more interesting in that side, so you don't get bored. And also there's a lot of weird characters that you pick up because it's an island, and you crashed on an island by being shipwrecked by a tentacle monster, but
As you do.
And then you meet like a 70-year-old lady who is a former gladiator, and she still has abs at 70 years old, and she can still swing a sword that's taller than her. And then you have a parrot who is odd because it seems to be able to interact with people better than parrots should be able to. But there's a reason for that later. But it's a solid game, but one I expect to forget about in a year from now, like every other ES game. Yet I own ES game, but I own all of them anyway. And also I've been very stressed lately, so I've been playing Rune Factory Frontier, which is kind of my comfort food. It was the
Harvest Moon with dungeon crawling.
Yep. Yeah, it's relaxing. It's the Wii version it's hard to explain because it should be the best one, but it isn't because it has massive loading times, and it has a ridiculously stupid system called the Rooney system for farming, where there are these Roonies that eat each other, but around the atmosphere around the town. and each section of the village has a certain ecosystem. And if you leave them alone, the Roonies will eat each other, and it will take you 20 days to plant and harvest a basic crop. So you have to keep those ecosystems in check, otherwise they will eat each other and everything will die. Which is just, it's a lot of time wasting every other week. But for whatever reason, this game is comfortable for me. It relieves my stress, and even though it is slow, it makes no sense, and you need a guide just to get through the main plot, even though it's a Rune Factory game. Yeah, it's comforting for me, and I've wasted hundreds of hours on it, more than I should. And I've also, since I can't play a lot of the horror games I usually play during Halloween, mainly I wanted to go through Fatal Frame 5, but my Wii U is doing that thing that all Wii U's eventually do, where the controller can only work when it's exactly 4 feet away, and that's only half the time. I'm playing Pathologic, which is a indie Russian horror game where you play as a doctor trying to figure out the secrets to eternal life, and then this other doctor invites you to this village where he may have found something, and then you get there and the doctor is murdered, his assistant is murdered, and there is a disease going around town, so you have to figure out what's going on with that, and figure out which of how the three families are manipulating you, because what they say to you up front is nobody is technically lying to you, but they are specifically telling you the truths that most help them. So it's an interesting game. I haven't gotten that far on it, but that's what I'm playing, and I have taken way too long on this.
It's no problem. Danny takes way too long too, and I just really have to rush through because I always talk about like 4 to 7 games. So it's no big deal. Let's go ahead and go to Elmo.
Woo.
And don't say Chantilly's.
Kill the fucking crab dog. So anyway,
Yes, Chantilly's is the topic for our next regular episode, and me and Danny pretty much gave up at the second boss because it's bullshit.
I didn't realize you could give up. I didn't realize that was an option.
I see it's going well.
Yeah. I'm just sat there like, man, this final boss is horrible, but you know, at least it'll be something interesting that we can all talk about. Well, anyway, it got to the 1st of October, and to be fair, Dark warned me like plenty in advance, like, Alan Wake is a pretty long game, you might want to get started on it now, and I was like, I'll breeze through it in like a weekend or something. So, 33 hours on Alan Wake later, and another 4 on American Nightmare. I haven't really been playing much of anything else lately. So I'm going to have to fall back on like the 2 games that I'm always pretty much playing a little bit. The Binding of Isaac. It's my most played Steam game, and by like an incredibly large margin, like 500 hours. And and you can tell that I'm kind of struggling to say something nice about it. I really like The Binding of Isaac, obviously. I've spent that much time on it. It's a great game, but after a while, when you play it, you just kind of... this seems like a really mean thing to say about an indie game, but I kind of wish that one of those soulless corporate Konami, EA people had just like swooped in and said, hey Edmund, you got something good here, we'll take it from here, we'll sand off all the rough edges that make it individual and interesting. We'll get rid of all that indie spirit, but we'll also get rid of all of the horrible bullshit. Like how, hey, did you know there's 2 characters who can't increase their health at all, but you still get health up items? Oh, the laughs never stop. And and the other game would be Roller Coaster Tycoon, which I'm just always playing. I finally made a start on like the expansion packs.
Oh,
right.
Joe, I should warn you that he's definitely going to gift you Roller Coaster Tycoon later.
Okay, that's fine. I used to play Dinosaur Tycoon when I was a kid all the time. And I was never good at it, but I would play it because dinosaurs.
Agreed. I used to play the Jurassic Park game on 3DO because it was at our daycare center in dinosaurs, and it was the worst thing. Just the worst.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sneering at my computer screen. I just have that face.
I played Jurassic Park for the Super Nintendo a lot, which was not a bad game. You just had to beat it in one entire 8-hour setting.
For me, I've been playing a lot of games, but I decided to just chop the list in half. Half for now and half for the Chantilly's episode, so I will not be talking about Hoonie Pop here, I'm sorry.
Oh.
I am so sorry.
But it's Halloween.
Instead, I'm going to talk about games I'm not ashamed to say I like. I know, a novel concept.
The thing is, I originally contributed to the Kickstarter of Honey Pop because I was in a bad spot in my life. And they gave me a Steam copy, so when Dark said, I need somebody who has the Honey Pop game if they were willing to gift it to it, so I gave him my Steam key to it. So I started this mess, and I am so sorry. I can never stop apologizing.
I'm in the middle of writing a full course, and it's going very well. I'm currently at the part where I discuss all the casual racism.
Oh, and there is a lot.
It's weird. I'm not going to go too much on a tangent on it, but I still really like Hoonie Pop as a game because I can tell the people who made it aren't complete dickbags who would make something like, let's say, The Triggering or that one Cyberpunk game that got milkshake ducked. But they definitely go on Chan boards and it shows.
Mm-hmm.
I'm here. And their next game is not only going to bring back the Weeaboo girl from Honeycam, which was terrible, but they're also introducing a horny Muslim girl.
Yep, who works for TSA.
Yeah.
I don't know. I get
well, anyways,
feeling...
let's talk. Let's talk about good games.
Okay.
Oh, I just realized one of these is still heavily focused on titty. It's Vanguard Princess, a 2D fighting game made by a single person who used to work at SNK and Capcom for a time. It is a beautiful sprite fighter with an all-female cast, and yes, boobs are in it. Not as much as you think, though. Just like in when you do a super move, a little anime scene plays real fast, and that's the only time it comes up, and it's just like blink and you miss it. Except for the character named Luna, who has like this cool gunfu moves that I really like using. She is Jesus. She is like the character you've probably seen. If you've seen artwork of this game, it's probably her and like her ridiculously big boobs. But if you actually play the game, you'll discover that her sprite and the constant panty shots are there. You'll notice she's not wearing panties; she's wearing a heart pasty.
Oh God.
It's a shame because I think it's a really good basic fighter that teaches you all the basic inputs that are so popular in the genre. It has some really fun characters, some cool personality, and the single most bullshit final boss ever.
He did work for SNK.
It's weird because the original version made the final boss's AI incredibly dumb so you could deal with it, but the Steam version fixed this, I say in air quotations, by giving her good AI, and all of her attacks are projectile focused, and she can combo from an entire screen away. So welcome to hell.
Yeah. Sounds like my hell.
I like it though. I especially like some of the DLC characters. Like there's a character named Lilith who's literally the daughter of Satan, and she's the grappler character. She's like a little Oni, like a little Ojo-sama proper rich girl, and a tiny little girl, but she charges at people and does fucking suplexes, and it's amazing. But yeah, solid game. A much better game with much less titty would be Mitsurugi Kamui Hikage. God, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. It is a single-player spectacle action game made by a small doujin studio you can pick up on Steam for like $5 or $10. And it takes a lot of inspiration from like Platinum game releases, like or Clover, or just like general old spectacle fighters that used to make a Capcom, like Devil May Cry, Bayonetta, Metal Gear Rising, that sort of thing. And it casts you as a shrine priestess who's hunting down her friend who's been possessed by an evil sword. The story is dirt simple, and it's really just an excuse for these arena combat segments with different enemies, like regular enemies in suits, giant robots, because why not, Oni monsters, these night creatures that can actually block your attacks and so forth. And it's a really fun test of like your technical mastery of the mechanics. It has a lot of replay value, and I kind of have the itch to go back to it. But the last two I've been playing to get in the mood for Halloween were both Costume Quest games.
Yeah, I saw a few of your posts on that, especially the one with candy corn.
I made mini candy corn post. For those who don't know, Costume Quest is like the most important Double Fine game you can play if you want an understanding of what Double Fine is today. It was like their first significant release that didn't involve a major publisher, aimed for a smaller size, and had someone besides Tim Schafer in charge of the creative direction. It was originally thought up by an ex-Pixar employee with the idea of like making some sort of RPG based around Halloween costumes. And the first game has a really simple, silly story where you pick either a girl or a boy out of the set of twins. The one you didn't pick gets kidnapped because they're mistaken as like actual candy corn because they're costumed by dim-witted monsters, and she has to go save them and save Halloween from this evil witch who's like using these monsters to steal all the candy in the town. And like the final boss is a gigantic fat Grim Reaper who just eats candy at the like armful. And it comes with a pretty fun DLC when you go to the monster world and you're like part of a resistance movement, and like trick-or-treating mechanic is changed to recruitment or gathering funds. And of course the funds are candy. But it's just like a really sweet tongue-in-cheek game. The twist is, instead of leveling up your characters, you get different costumes as you play the game. And you get, when you enter a battle with a monster, the art style completely shifts and you become your costume and get all sorts of cool powers. And I think my favorite part is that the box of fries costume turns out to be one of the best ones. It has like an attack that does paralyzes every single enemy on the screen, and just has generally strong basic attack. The original is very rough around the edges, but Costume Quest 2 fixes all of it. It has a more ambitious story about like an evil dentist trying to create a cyberpunk future that outlaws Halloween. And he does, and you have to like go through a cyberpunk future ruled by monsters where candy's outlawed. And it's so weird. And it's basically traveling to the past and future, trying to set things right. There's a lot more creative designs, a lot more creative costumes. Oh, and most importantly, the clown costume lets you honk a bike horn as much as you want, and there's a section in the game you must do in order to continue where you freestyle that bike horn while on stage with a jazz band. It's quite satisfying.
As Earthbound has proved, you don't want to give me anything that involves bike noises.
There's actually an achievement for using that bike horn 1,000 times, and I got it pretty fast. The minute I got that costume, I just walk up to random NPCs in the area and just honk that thing wildly at their face. It never gets old. If they just made a game that was that, I would love it. there's so many funny lines in that sequel too, and so many like really interesting concepts. I hope they return to the series one day, but they ended it on a good note, so I think it's all wrapped up. That would be it for me, and that would mean it's time to get into our main discussion of Alan Wake.
How can I be sure that you won't walk away? Why'd you love deception? Let me live this way. Or how can I be sure the safety of your arms doesn't suffocate me for all that they do? How can I be sure?
Alright, where should we start with this?
It's kind of hard to figure out where to start. Maybe just a basic overview of the game. It's kind of a triple A sort of survival horror game that's based on the works of Stephen King, the works of David Lynch, kind of the works of John Carpenter. It's a lot of things funneled through Sam Lake's subconsciousness. Oh yeah, and there's also Lovecraftian stuff in there as well. Maybe a little bit of Silent Hill, and lots of other horror movies.
Yeah, it definitely takes from a lot of sources. Like right off the bat, probably the Stephen King and David Lynch elements really stick out the most, because the start of the game has a very direct dialogue going on where like the bad guy is just like, I'm one of your characters and I'm gonna kill you. There is no mystery of what's going on there, but it's so weird it catches your attention, and this is basically how Stephen King works. And then you wake up from this dream where that creation's trying to kill you, and you find yourself in a small town somewhere in America called Bright Falls. And the minute you step into the diner, there's like already a stand-in for the log lady from Twin Peaks. There's those two random rockers named after Norse gods, random coffee waitress. And you get the feeling that, yeah, this is very Twin Peaks-ish.
And also, the rockers want you to play Coconut. Put the lime in the coconut and drink it all up. There, that song's going to be in your head for the next week. You're welcome.
Oh, well, I guess I'll just have to play What's New Pussycat.
A little bit of Tom Jones.
Anyways, the basic gist of the game is that Alan Wake, the main character, has come to this small town to get away from things. He's stressing about writing his newest book, but he ends up going to a cabin with, I'm sorry, was it his wife or fiance? I can't remember.
It was his wife, Alice.
Okay, I wasn't sure if they were married at that point. Yeah, his wife Alice, and they go to a secluded cabin at a place called Cauldron Lake, and things seem relatively normal but creepy for a while. But Alan leaves the house for a bit in a huff after finding out Alice brought him here because she wants to take him to a therapist to work out his creative issues. And then shit gets crazy when just like a murder of crows starts charging at him. All the lights go out, and his wife, who's deathly afraid of the dark, starts to freak out, so he rushes back. He finds her fallen into the ocean, and then he wakes up in a moving car, crashes, has to walk through the woods, and keeps finding pages of a manuscript that he seems to have written that's telling the future, while people that seem to be possessed by something and are speaking in like strange nonsense are trying to murder him.
Omega-3 fatty acids are good for your heart.
Yes, like that. And then he finds out that the cabin on Cauldron Lake doesn't exist because decades ago, called that there was a volcano eruption or something that destroyed everything there. So, he's having a good day.
Yep. And then the second day, he finds that an FBI agent is after him and will shoot to kill him on sight.
It keeps calling him different writer names. I'm trying to remember all of them. There's just so many.
Oh, yeah. The writer of the Maltese Falcon was one. And it's
I know
like,
they
Come
called
here,
him
cell,
names.
Raymond Chandler.
He had to have said Lovecraft at some point.
yeah.
Easton Ellis was one. I don't know who that is, but that was the name.
He wrote American Psycho, which follows up with American Nightmare, but we'll get to that one.
Yeah, but the idea is that Alan's in a very weird situation that he suspects he might have made somehow. There's a week missing of his life as he finds out, and not everything's adding up. But it's very clear that the thing that took his wife seems to be real because people are being possessed by this darkness, or dark presence as the game calls it. But as things go on, you start to question whether he's even sane at this point and how much of what you're seeing from his perspective is accurate. But as it goes on further, boy oh boy. This fucking game.
Yeah.
We should mention a bit about the company that made it, Remedy Entertainment, and the writer Sam Lake, because I think it's very important to understanding just what this is. Remedy Entertainment, before Alan Wake, only worked on two different franchises. The first was some sort of death race game that doesn't seem to be well remembered, but the second thing was the big thing, the Max Payne series, which you may know as one of the most popular action game series ever created, like critically and by word of mouth.
Yeah. Sorry.
Oh no, go on.
I played it a little bit back in the day. I didn't get very far because I was really bad at it, but yeah, it's certainly familiar stuff. Like you're going through these hallways, and then eventually you can turn on the TV, and there's a program, and it's like the program for what is it? Max Payne is some sort of satirical thing, and then here
it's like a crime drama, if I remember
Yeah.
correctly.
but it's kind of tongue-in-cheek in how it was a crime drama. And then you go to here, and it's Night Springs, which is a Twilight Zone parody where it's not parody in the game because Alan Wake worked for it, so his first job was in television, writing for this series. So
Make a note of that. It's going to be important later.
yeah, actually it is.
But yeah, those are like really cool segments, like the one with the plot hole, the literal plot hole.
Mhm.
Later's like, what's this thing? And then the guy comes out and explains that he has no idea what that thing is supposed to be because he didn't get that far and they're all not real. Spoilers, foreshadowing, so forth.
Yeah, and then there's the one where they're all dreams trying to not wake the guy up because they're worried that they'll die if he wakes up.
And then he wakes up.
Yeah.
It's the interesting thing, it's all done in FMV, which is also important because when we get to American Nightmare, that's going to be a reoccurring theme. This game is interesting because it tries presenting itself as a television series, which is something they continued on much more literally with Quantum Break nowadays, which is sadly not that interesting.
Littlefinger's in
God.
it.
I mean, I love this game, and then I saw their next series, and I'm like, I just never got into it, and I couldn't understand why.
I think it's because it looks like every single TV show ever made, ever. Especially because they have like actual familiar actors and stuff like that. And it's
Yeah.
like playing with a high concept idea, but it's presenting it as like an American television show, so they can't actually really have fun with the visuals of that high concept idea because they pigeonholed them themselves.
Yeah, it was just kind of there. I didn't dislike it. I didn't really like it. It was just kind of there.
Yeah, we do not have this problem with Alan Wake, thankfully.
No, the reaction I get from people, it's either one of their favorite games ever, or they just like, I had enough of it, I'm done, I'm walking away, and this is the stupidest thing ever. I saw somebody on Twitter once say, well, done with Alan Wake. Well, that was the stupidest thing ever.
It's funny, you can always tell when someone's weak when they find a very meta narrative and think, oh, this is stupid, and I just eat it up like a fucking idiot. I've gotten to the point where I can accurately judge how good a Grant Morrison comic is based on the type of meta it goes for. Batman Eek with the Jason Todd stuff, entry level boring bullshit. The Invisibles, kind of racist but interesting. The Filth, holy shit, I love this. The planet dies by sex, oh my god.
Dark, you're liking something called The Filth? I am shocked.
It's legitimately fantastic, and it goes to some fucked up places, but it does it well. I remember, this is the man who made an event comic where one of the main plot points was Superman reciting the exact bell chime Batman used in like the prehistoric era to destroy an evil god. That is what we're talking about here.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, Alan Wake is a very meta game. In fact, it's partly about the writer Sam Lake himself. He wrote for the Max Payne series, and the Max Payne series gets a lot of praise, not a lot of action games of its ilk have ever gotten, and that is that it has like legitimately great characters, and at the time it explored really interesting idea, really serious subject matter that hadn't really been explored in many games with that much reach before. It's still very action gamey, and there's a lot of pulpy stuff like all the mobsters who talk with stereotypical Italian accents. I swear one of them says, can you believe what I'm saying, or something like that at one point.
I'm trying to remember my favourite Max Payne moment. I think there's a moment when Max is like tied up to a chair and some guy's about to interrogate him, and he's just like holding a baseball bat in his hand, and he goes, I'm Frankie the Bat Niagara. And Max goes, Niagara, as in you cry a lot? and the internal monologue just says, he had a baseball bat and I was tied to a chair. Pissing him off was definitely the right thing to do.
It's weird, I actually played the first Max Payne with the Steam version, which is actually broken. So like entire voice clips and the entire musical soundtrack is missing for the entirety of the game. And that actually made it better because the music is terrible. It's all really generic rock theme, super exciting bullshit. And it does not fit at all with a story about a man going through a psychological break over the death of his family, trying to desperately do one last good thing with his miserable life. And then the game ends with some conspiracy bullshit so they can have a sequel.
The one good thing he wants to do with his life is drop a pylon on a helicopter.
The amazing thing is that apparently the sequel is actually really good writing wise, and even made like people cry, especially with that one song they put in it that everyone won't shut up about if they've ever played that game.
Ever since I went on to TV Tropes, then I just, when people say, oh, people have cried over this, I just finished watching Ant-Man. One of the ants dies. It's on the tearjerker page on TV Tropes. Like, when the ant died, I was like, oh my god, this is the saddest thing I've ever seen in my life. And it's just...
I can tell you for a fact that Max Payne 2 is not in that same category. I've seen like genuine game critics I know and respect, and video producers talk about this game, and they all eventually mention that they either cried or were close to crying after one certain sequence with a certain character dying.
Okay.
So that tells me the Max Payne games did something right when it comes to getting someone emotionally connected. it was a big deal. It also really changed the mechanical landscape. Like, it made slow-mo really popular in action games for a while. You actually see a bit of it in Alan Wake with the cinematic dodge. So it was a landmark release. And then they had to follow it up after giving the rights to the series to Rockstar. And it took them years. They took a short break, pitched out some ideas, premiered the idea of Alan Wake in 2005, and it took years, a lot of product placement, and getting a pickup from Microsoft, which I think they could only do because they remember them as the Max Payne guys and figured maybe this will work.
I would like to retract my because I thought we were talking about Max Payne 3, which is definitely
No.
deserving of it.
Yeah, it was a long journey for Alan Wake. It was originally supposed to be an open world horror game. Kinda, sorta similar to maybe Deadly Premonition, except with a much larger budget, but eventually it got flipped to the straightforward story-dominated game it is.
That's probably for the best. And I think, actually, I remember reading that they actually got rid of that open world stuff because they realized it wasn't serving their main goals with the game. Now, why can't Rockstar do that more often? Remember what a mess... Remember Grand Theft Auto 4?
Yeah, I remember it.
I think that game would have benefited a lot from being structured more like Max Payne than a Grand Theft Auto game.
Yeah, I was more okay with it because I lived in New Jersey and went to New York from time to time, and I was just so in awe on how much they, recaptured, I have been down this street, I know what this street is, and I know what's around the corner, and that's kind of neat. So, but that's just a me thing. I understand it's a flawed game, especially the driving, and there's not a whole lot to do. And if that's the case, Grand Theft Auto 5 is worse because it's even larger, there's a lot less to do, and really the golden parts are when you're in heist mode, and they are very literally trying to make a Michael Mann film out of this, down to the soundtrack, which they use the, I forget the new wave band they picked for the soundtrack to Thief, Tangerine Dream. So they got Tangerine Dream on the soundtrack just because they were in the Michael Mann film Thief, and they were trying to make a Michael Mann heist thing. And those are the parts of the game that work. And then the rest of it, you're in Los Angeles, which is one of the most boring large cities I've ever been in my life, even though everybody in Hollywood has to write a movie about it because they think it's so fascinating.
Going back on topic.
Yeah.
We should mention right now that the writer for this game, Sam Lake, was, as far as I can tell, the first thing he officially wrote and sold were the Max Payne games. So right off the bat, he got put on the map for writing this surprisingly good game in this action series, and that caught a lot of people's attention. And Alan Wake directly touches up on his own anxieties relating to that. If you couldn't tell, their names rhyme for a reason.
I know it's a really minor touch, or maybe not, maybe I'm completely wrong about this, but I really, really liked how Alan Wake, being a writer who's suffering from writer's block, that's not something that you would immediately think, oh, that'll make him marketable, that'll make him sympathetic to a bunch of people, but it does. Because he's a writer, that means he's kind of creative, and I think everyone likes to think that they're a bit creative, and he has writer's block. Well, how many people have a little project in their heads that they've thought, yeah, I could, if I ever got some free time or won the lottery or something, yeah, I'd do that. Totally, it's on my to-do list.
What really makes it work is that they make this central to understanding the story and the main themes at play, and the DLC episodes especially, which you can get on the PC version, which sadly isn't available anymore because of licensing bullshit. We'll get to it in a moment. You can the 2 DLC episodes actually take place in Alan Wake's head, and you are constantly interrupted by narration from an inner part of himself filled with self-loathing that just wants to give up. And that's where you get a better idea of why he's having this writer's block, and it all becomes way more interesting. It's basically Sam Lake trying to relay his own anxieties over being the Max Payne guy, being the guy who made this super popular thing, trying to follow it up, and realizing they may not actually be as good as everyone says they are, and they just got lucky. And that's just spirals into absolute madness here.
Also, you can shoot possessed refrigerators with a flare gun.
But they relate this in the game, and it's kind of a little on the nose because he's an author of this crime series with main character Sam Casey. And his latest one was The Sudden Stop, where Sam Casey dies, and then we have Max Payne 2, The Fall of Max Payne. So you make the connections.
Plus, you can actually read pages from those books, and one of them mentions that he eats a lot of painkillers, the main mechanic of health for Max Payne.
Pretty sure that the Alex Casey...
And also, like, Sam Lake appears in the game itself and during a fake talk show and actually does the Max Payne face. He's the literal face of Max Payne. They just photocopied his face and put it on the character model. Okay. And Rockstar got rid of that. Cowards. But yeah, that's the basic idea of the game. The way it goes about while you're dealing with these challenges from these possessed people called the Taken, and like random living objects possessed by this dark presence, you also get little moments that reveal a bit more, like just on the TV. Sometimes you'll suddenly see Alan Wake on the TV talking to himself about the writing process and going slowly insane. It kind of makes you realize weird stuff is going on, much weirder than you initially seems. And that's where the manuscript pages really come into play as like narrative additions, because as you collect them and read them, you'll realize they're giving you heads up on stuff that's about to happen. And it gets really weird at points. Like there's one part in the game where a character dies, and when you pick up the page they left that they were trying to get out of their pocket, it directly reads that the character was trying to get the page out of their pocket and then read it and was surprised to read that he was getting the page out of his pockets.
Yeah,
stuff like that. Oh, and of course the infamous page where Alan Wake picks up a page, and then he picks up a page, and then he picks up a page, and so forth.
And then of those moments where the characters read their own death.
It's pretty messed up. American Nightmare goes way further into what's going on with this, and like one really cool scene during... Well, I don't want to spoil it yet, we'll get into spoilers in a bit, but there's basically a debate between two characters talking about what it means to write a story that affects reality, and it's really just generally philosophically interesting. But yeah, we'll get more into that later. There's a lot to cover before that.
I really like the manuscript page where, I mean, I have to confess that I kind of stockpiled them, and then at the end of an episode I would read all of them, which still works really well with foreshadowing, because some of the things actually cross over between episodes. I finished episode 3 and read a page, and it said, like, Alan held the door shut, he heard the dark presence taking them, he had a smirk on his face, and I kind of thought, oh, I must have missed that. I don't remember that happening. And then 10 minutes into episode 4, boom! But the one I remember reading, because for some reason I just thought, yeah, why not? I'll read this one. And it's pretty early on in the game, and he's put like, my hand was still shaking every time I aimed the gun, but I was beginning to get used to it. I was beginning to think I might be able to get out of this alive. Then I heard the chainsaw. And then you take a few steps forwards, and you hear the chainsaw, and you're just like, ah, damn you, manuscript.
The game constantly did that to me, and I loved it.
It kind of bothered me a little bit because it brings out spoilers, like what you're going to experience around the corner. That kind of bothers me. I'd like to go in cold, but the manuscript wouldn't let me.
it leaves out a lot of details though, so while you get spoiled on some stuff, the actual context isn't fully there, and it definitely never shows all the cards. There's always going to be something really unexpected coming at you. I actually did a full course article on this game in American Nightmare that I'm going to be reading a lot off of as we go on, but one thing I didn't really feel I talked about enough was that this game reminds me a lot of Resident Evil 4 mechanically. It just like much more stripped down to create a more involving experience, and I think it succeeds at that. While American Nightmare goes more the action route with all the different weapons you can get, and it's more mechanically satisfying, but I don't think it would have worked at all with the first game.
No, the first game definitely needed not an action hero. It was American Nightmare definitely felt like a horror action movie, like really grungy and all of that. And this one feels more like a more straight horror movie. And
yeah, think of this like as Evil Dead 1 and that Army of Darkness.
Yeah, I felt like American Nightmare was more akin to Resident Evil 4, but that's because they have that ripoff of Mercenary mode called the arcade mode.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a Resident Evil ripoff without it.
You get the
where
weirdest
was
achievement
Hunk?
in that one.
You can't play as Hunk. That's bullshit. He has a knife.
I sucked at
Anyway.
the arcade mode. I tried it a few times. Not very good.
Anyways, the main idea for the first Alan Wake is that you get a set number of simple firearms, like a basic shotgun. You do get a pump action one that holds more ammo, but that's really all it does extra. There's a basic handgun, a hunting rifle that can really down an enemy fast. I'm trying to remember. And of course the flare gun, which you don't get much ammo for, but when you have it, it's basically a press this and win button.
Yeah. We should probably explain that the people affected by the Dark Presence are called the Taken, and then they become your enemy, and the infected darkness keeps them from dying, so you have to shine a light on them until they become vulnerable, and then you can finish them off with the weapon of your choice, unless you have a flare gun, which is just, pull it and it explodes, and then they explode.
You can shine light normally with the flashlight, which you can actually focus with to increase its power and get rid of their darkness aurora faster. And yes, American Nightmare does address this, and is like wondering, how can I do that? I guess I just focus really hard and it happens. And that was really cute. Actually, keep remembering, like, the advertising for American Nightmare is great. Like, they make fun of their own ending at one point and have an entire sequence where, like, Mr. Scratch just kills everyone in, like, the Remedy Entertainment offices.
Well, I'm glad they had fun with the American Nightmare ending, because it was rushed and not very good.
We'll get there.
Yeah.
But anyways, along with the flashlight, you can also get regular flares, which you can walk around with and place down to give yourself room if you need it. They're not really effective offensively, but they're good defensively, especially if you just want to run and get the hell out of there if you're low on ammunition. Which happened to me at one point, because I thought I was going to get more ammunition down the road, because this game gives you a lot of supplies generally. But I miscalculated. I was out of ammunition, so I just had to run like hell to the radio station and hope I didn't die. The game's very corridor focused, point A to point B, and there are like lampposts you can get to that act as safety areas where you can regenerate your health faster. It's regenerating health, but it's still balls hard anyways, because you do not regenerate health quickly during dark segments. And you also have a stamina meter, so good luck with that.
And Alan Wake is really out of shape.
Oh yeah, he's a writer, not an action hero. That doesn't come till later.
It fits. It's just like, man, that was barely a block
It does have the cinematic dodge, though, where if you time it right, you can dodge a move, and a cool cinematic dodge plays. And I never really got the hang of the mechanic because I was playing with the keyboard and it was a little awkward with it. I also had problems like cycling through weapons and flares and stuff because of my mouse wheel at the time. Oh yeah, along with the flare I mentioned, you get flash grenades later, which are sort of like the flare gun. They don't have nearly as much range. If I remember correctly, yeah, they can destroy Taken. That's why I'm remembering.
Flashbangs can take them down.
And then there, I think there was a third item. It's been a while since I played this one. Sorry.
Flares, flash bangs, flare guns.
And flares.
Oh yeah, I remember what I was gonna say. You can use the environment. There are like generators you can find that turn on lights, and if you time things right, you can trick an enemy into appearing under a light right before it goes on, and when it turns on, instead of just disappearing until you go back into their area, they instantly die, which is very useful. It can be tricky to do that, but it's really satisfying when you get it right. And while the game starts off sort of like a regular Resident Evil game, where enemies are sparse, but there's this constant sense of dread, the later segments get increasingly combat focused and ridiculous, like revolving around having to fight a gigantic angry float, or having to like fight a bunch of Taken on a live heavy metal music soundstage as rock music plays in the background.
That's
fun stuff like that.
That's where I think the game really benefits from being episodic, because I'm definitely in like the former camp that was mentioned, in that this is definitely now one of my favourite games. It's not in the top tier of favourite games with Earthbound and like Tales of Symphonia, but it's still there. It would make the list. But I'm reading the thing I've written because I took notes and I've completely forgotten where I was. Episodes, yes, they are good. They work well because even though there's a lot of atmosphere and there's a lot of story, at its core, it's still a game where you run around and shine light in bad guys' faces and then shoot them. And so if it was like 5 hours in a row of that, I would get bored more quickly. So the fact that it's split up into episodes and I just tackled it one episode at a time, kind of one day at a time, and never got bored.
Yeah, you can definitely tell there's Stephen King influence here, because it's very easy to understand what's going on the further you go on, and things get increasingly ridiculous to the point that you can barely call it a horror story anymore. Like, if you've read like stuff like It or the ending of The Stand or so forth, there's eventually a point where Stephen King just says, fuck it. Like, really, the ending of The Stand was literally that. He ran out of ideas of where to take the story, so he just had a character bring in a nuke. I'm trying to remember what other stories he rushed, because there's quite a few of them. Oh yeah, the ending to the entire Dark Tower series just ends up making the big bad of the whole franchise a super weak old man who throws grenades at people. Yeah, that's Stephen King for you. And there's definitely elements of that here, but it ties it up more thematically relevant, and as stuff gets increasingly ridiculous, it actually gets more threatening, which is hard to pull off. Not like in a mechanical sense, but in definitely a story progression stance, you realize just how big the stakes really are.
And then later in the DLC, where it is your enemy is much more elaborate, but I know we'll get there in spoilers.
Yeah, but that one would definitely be more in the David Lynchian part of it. A lot of the comedies is like very David Lynchian, with just like weird small town cutaways. But then it goes into like Evil Dead territory with characters like Barry, who basically becomes the fat Ash Williams.
I took a bunch of notes about its approaches, and what I feel like is it's a combination. It's a mainstream combination of David Lynch and John Carpenter. Because Lynch, there's definitely the matching the Americana with surrealistic nightmare, which is definitely here. And with John Carpenter, a lot of the big things for his horror, like The Thing and In the Mouth of Madness, is becoming the enemy, essentially.
And plus, it basically takes the main concept of the Mouth of Madness and runs a different direction with it.
That too. The thing I like about this is because I have seen so many people that are like, oh, I so love these things all the time, and I'm going to make something just like it, and it turns out horrible. Like, there's a little remembered summer ABC series called Happy Town, which was essentially, it was going to be David Lynch and Stephen King, and it was going to be all these cool things, and they even got Sam Neill to be in it, and it was just terrible because there was no inspiration for it. And this one, it has a little bit of it. You have to bring something of your own to the table, really, because otherwise you're just going to be a copycat. And you cannot copycat David Lynch. People have tried, and it has not gone well.
I think this is why I like early Suda51 more than his current self, because it feels like now he's trying to copy more like basic popular creative ideas and like, of course, more titty.
Of course, more titty.
But like Suda51 in the past, when he took inspiration from people like David Lynch, and boy oh boy did he do that for Killer 7, and like the Wachowskis and with their Matrix movie for like Flower, Sun, and Rain and so on and so forth. He always added a lot of his own weird views and ideas along with some of his staff, and the end result was something you can never mistake for anyone else. And that's the same feeling I get when I play Alan Wake. This is something that can only really occur with Sam Lake's input, and that's what really makes it special to me. It's very different from like something like Resident Evil 4, which is mechanically fantastic and masterful. Like, that is the product of masters of the craft. But this is the product of like not a craftsman but an artist, someone really trying to express something and doing it really well, like getting really personal about it. And I think they captured something much more universal in the process.
Yeah.
Sorry if I get a little pretentious.
Lynch is not very universal, let's just say. I mean, I love a lot of his work, but getting regular people to watch David Lynch film, or even like something like Twin Peaks: The Return, which is there's the Twin Peaks stuff there, but it's also David Lynch getting his playground of ideas, like just an entire episode dedicated to how a nuclear bomb explosion creating this dimensional rip of homeless people who say gotta light a lot and then just kill a bunch of people. And it's
or of course that one scene where David Lynch talks about how much he loves pie.
Oh yeah. But this is certainly more accessible. Like, you can get the ideas that this game is putting down without just having to go out there or getting blazed or something like that.
Yeah, unlike Killer 7.
That was the most straightforward game I've ever played.
Oh, I had it. I played a little bit and then I forgot I had it until I sold it. So I needed to play it again. They need to do a re-release on digital.
What's amazing about Killer 7 is a lot of it actually does make sense when you stop and think about it for a moment, but that makes all the things that don't make sense make even less sense. There are just so many fucking layers to it, and it's amazing because it directly copies some pretty simplistic things and then makes it absolute madness. This is more the opposite. It's taking a lot of high concept ideas and ideas from very prestige creators, and then makes it more palatable to a wider audience. But because of Sam Lake's addition of himself in there, it feels more than just a copy of their work. I also really like the mechanical stuff. There's a lot of Max Payne in here, just more atmosphere and just less action focused and more like the basic set, like looking around, using your gun, the cinematic dodge, stuff like that. I think they knew how to make it feel good to play, but also not easy to play.
Yeah. My experience was on the Xbox 360, where, as you have noted, the difficulty was borked a little bit because it was way too easy. Didn't stop me from dying a few times, but normal was definitely easy mode, and then the hard mode was kind of normal, and then hardest mode wasn't really that hard. I would get stuck a lot, but I made it through it on the highest difficulty on 360. Didn't really get to experience it that much on PC, because by the time when they were, our license is expiring, we're selling this for $3. I already played through the game about 5 times, so I have it on PC. I haven't played it on PC, but I hear it's a lot harder.
It is. And since we brought up the licenses, we should mention this is a very cinematic game. Quantum Break is like the end point of that and the point where it becomes bad, but Alan Wake gets the right balance. It's divided up like a TV series that we said, and that includes an episode end credits theme. Every episode has a different ending song. There are some original ones here. One's from Poets of the Fall, who also do the music for the in-game band Sons of Asgard. No, Old Gods of Asgard. But there's also stuff you've heard just outright licensed, which is why you can't get it on PC anymore. Like, there's my favorite, Up Jump the Devil, which I cannot get out of my head. There's a song from David Bowie in here. I forget the exact name, but it's one from, it's the Major Tom
Space
song.
Oddity.
That's it. And these songs, I think, are really important to the game because they perfectly cap the emotion at the end of an episode and make you interested in playing the next episode, and even create like solid endpoints where you can just turn off the game for a while and come back later, which is something I would love a lot more games to do, like JRPGs, because you never know when it's a good place to stop and not feel like you'll be emotionally distant when you pick it up again.
Yeah. I find they often do that with endings, like, okay, we're going to the final part of the game. It's going to be really over now. 20 hours later, maybe the final boss.
The Tales series is super guilty of this. Especially because they always have the quarter or half game twist mixed in that make it seem like you're near the end of the story, but you're not.
Anyway, on the note of the music, I took some notes here. It's like they had Young Man Dead by the Black Angels, which was apparently the song of 2010 if you were in certain parts of culture, because that was used on the advertising of Fable 3.
Oh god.
Yeah. And then I remember it being used on the CBS show Person of Interest, and it was everywhere the year it came out. In Dreams by Roy Orbison was used in a very, very memorable scene from Blue Velvet, which was David Lynch, so there's a direct connection there. Haunted by... the end of the second episode had Haunted by Poe as its end episode, which is actually a literary reference. I mean, I know Poe is Edgar Allan Poe, but also, Poe is the sister of the person who wrote House of Leaves. And House of Leaves is essentially a found footage horror movie made into a book. And a lot of people like it. I'm not that big of a fan of it, but it is a really interestingly made where it's people doing a documentary on a film that does not exist on this house that apparently has minotaurs and mazes in it. So it's really out there in concept, so if you like stuff like that. But Haunted, which the album itself was the unofficial soundtrack to the House of Leaves, so there's a literary connection there, and also Haunted is a really good song that they used really well. Trying to think of what else there is. Anna Turnheim I don't remember from the first DLC actually has a connection with the Silent Hill series, because when Team Silent Hill stopped doing it and farming it out and they got to other countries that are in the West, Silent Hill Downpour came out soon after this one. I don't know, maybe a couple of years or so, but they did a similar thing where they had radios with music on it that you could turn on, and it was a little more less clear about what exactly the radio was supposed to do, but it would occasionally play music in the background. And they had 2 Anna Tierheim songs, so Alan Wake has a connection to the Silent Hill series, despite, it's in this survival horror genre.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of references. You look around, like the character Thomas Soft, like the first writer that the Darkness tried to use before Wake came in, is like I think he's like a reference to In the Mouth of Madness by H.P. Lovecraft. I know one of his names is connected to a Lovecraft story, but I don't know which one.
I tried to read Lovecraft. It honestly kind of bored me, but I don't like that kind of horror. I just don't like...
Plus the
indescribable, racism, and also undescribable horror that just makes you insane because it does kind of strikes me as lazy, but the Cthulhu people will be on me for that.
Yeah, you just gotta... There are elements of Lovecraft lore that's really interesting when it gets into like the really more high-minded ideas, but that doesn't happen a lot.
Yeah.
He often just goes to squid monster.
Mm-hmm.
Fish people.
How do you think H.P. Lovecraft would feel knowing that, like, he's probably best known today for, like, hey, isn't he that guy who wrote that thing that you can summon in Scribblenauts?
Oh, Scribblenauts, a game I wish I'd gotten to, but I never did.
I wrote down some notes on the characters you meet in the series, and I really like the characters in the series. It reminds me a lot of Stephen King writing, because you get a good sense of who these people are fairly quickly. Like, even in Alan's writing, there's a lot of notes on the thoughts and what they do for a living, just like their smallest opinions on things. And I also noticed they reference a lot of media they watch or like and stuff like that, so you get an idea of their taste, and that's a type of detail you normally don't see in writing. So I think the most important character besides like Wake and Rose is Barry, Alan's Alan's agent, who constantly seems like he's going to be the first victim because he's cowardly, fat, from New York, and doesn't believe any of this mystic bullshit. But he ends, and there's even a point in the game where it looks like it's going to happen, because you get a page that reads like he's trying to run from something and then an explosion happens, and then you hear an explosion in the distance and you think, oh, I guess he finally died. But then it turns out he lived. He found the sound stage used by that crazy rock man you found, and then you have a boss fight against an army of monsters there as he controls the stage. And he makes it through the entire game. He's even probably the smartest character in terms of realizing how he should fight these things. So, like, he makes on the stupid side, he makes a armor suit of Christmas lights. But on the smart side, he puts a gigantic spotlight on his head that instant kills them. So, God, he's just really fun, and it's really fun to hear from him again in American Nightmare through the radio, where he's just going back to business, and he's just trying to desperately keep those two rock guys in line.
And try to be a music producer when he has never been a music producer in his life.
Let's see, there are a lot of characters that are pretty direct references to Twin Peaks, like the coffee waitress, Rose, and Cynthia Weaver, the lamp lady, who's just like hugging a lamp and talking about how the lights need to be changed when you first meet her. And I instantly thought, oh, that must be that weird log lady I see in all the, like, whenever people bring up Twin Peaks and not something horrible from it.
Although, that kind of gets me sad, because the lady who played the log lady died shortly after Twin Peaks: The Return, and you just see she's in the series, but you see her on the phone and you can clearly see she is very sick and she is on life support.
Oh.
And it's just so sad.
I'm glad she went out doing what she loved.
Yeah. Making sure people knew what the log told her, because it is very important. And it does turn out to be actually very important.
Along with those characters, we have Agent Nightingale, who we've mentioned before, and boy, oh boy, that name's pretty fucking obvious.
Yeah.
He's one of the minor antagonists, and it's not really clear what his deal is in the game, other than he seems to know the truth about Alan somewhat. You find out more of it in like the special edition book, and it basically comes down to his partner died because of this incident that's happening. There's Sheriff Sarah Breaker, who ends up apparently becoming close to Barry in the sequel. Okay.
Yeah.
And it's never really said outright, but she seems to be part of like some secret group in Bright Falls, and like the Night Springs TV show is partly based off real things that's happened to her. And like she's basically in charge of keeping all this crazy paranormal shit under control, and like even when you're traveling with her on the road, as things are really going crazy, and like the parade floats are being possessed, people like in windows are just like, this is a normal thing that happens and aren't even recognizing it. They're just telling her to cut down the racket and all these damn kids.
And also breaker, like the breaker on, you flip to turn the lights back on.
Oh, there's of course everyone's favorites, Odin and Thor. Right. Odin and Thor Anderson, the old gods of Asgard, some old Viking metal rockers who got put in an insane asylum at some point. And I've even dealt with the Dark Presence before. There's Thomas Zane, I mentioned before, or was it Zoth? Crap, I can't remember.
Thomas Zane.
Okay. Yeah, he's the writer who was there before Wake. You see like some of his books in the cabin, but he doesn't seem to be remembered by anyone, but there are constant hits about him throughout the game, and he appears to you as like some sort of diver or a source of light. There's Carl Stuckey, the one of the first possessed you meet, who talks about hot dogs.
Carl Stuckey.
And it's interesting because whenever you meet a Taken, they're usually talking like they're referring to their profession or like their basic archetype. And this is interesting because it's basically telling you that the Dark Presence needs creatives because it is not a creative. At best, it is an editor, and when it tries writing things on its own, which is like when it possesses people, it turns out as a person just talking about their job at the gas station.
Fishing can be a hobby and a job.
It's both terrifying and kind of hilarious after a while.
My impression was the darkness fried their brain, and whatever brain stuff they had, they were just saying the first thing that popped out. But I like that the editing makes it make more sense.
Yeah, let's see. We also have Ben Mott, the first real villain you meet, who seems to be some sort of kidnapper who may have taken your wife for real. And, of course, the doctor who brought you here in the first place, Dr. Hartman, who runs an insane asylum on, like, the hills. There are other characters, but those are, like, the most important ones. Oh, and, of course, the mysterious lady covered in darkness who pops up every once in a while, who tricked you going to the cabin in the first place and is clearly, like, connected to the Dark Presence because, covered in darkness and all that. It keeps you in the dark of who's telling the truth and who's lying for a long time, but it becomes really clear by the end, and then things get just, like, fucking wild. As far as American Nightmare goes, it has 3 human characters you meet: Emma Sloan, Dr. Rachel Meadows, and Zarina Valdia. Emma is a stoner running a car mechanic shop somewhere in Nevada. Rachel is a scientist working at an observatory, and Serena is running a film festival and has met Alan Wake's wife. But I'll explain more about them later because it's really hard to get into details in American Nightmare without giving the surprise away. Oh, and then of course there's Mr. Scratch, who's really hard to explain, but he's basically all the rumors about Alan Wake made real, and he's a crazy psycho who's super charismatic and constantly wants to be the center of attention. And all the Taken he makes in his game are like really pulpy and ridiculous, like a giant mentally damaged hillbilly with a chainsaw, and the guy who turns into birds, and the guy who like splits up in the other guys. Like at that point, it's very clear he has a different sense of what is horror.
One of the things I wanted to bring up is that to get a sense of the guy, he is like that scene in American Psycho where Christian Bale pops on Hip to Be Square and then murders that guy. He always looks like a guy who needs to have Huey Lewis on the news on while he's slaughtering someone. That is essentially the essence of this character.
Knife, good for getting up close and personal. He's fantastic. I also love his. He actually has a theme song in the game called the Happy Song, and the lyrics are just like, "I'm a psycho." And it's just constantly just screaming random nonsense about mental disorders, but it all sounds like bullshit because it is, and it perfectly encapsulates his child in a fancy suit character.
Yeah, he definitely feels like a kid who like got to see R-rated movies for the first time. Now he wants to be all the R-rated movies.
I think we've talked on the basics enough, so like in order to really get into the meat of why this series is so amazing, we finally need to get into spoilers.
Oh my, what a wretched life. I was born on the day that my poor mama died. I was cut from her belly with a Stanley knife. My daddy did a jig with a drunk midwife. Who's that yonder all in flames, dragging behind him a sack of chains? Who's that yonder all in flames? For up jumped the devil and he staked his claim on me.
I'm a ghost again.
If you haven't noticed by now, the premise of Alan Wake is really that Alan Wake himself has rewritten reality. The basic gist is that during this missing week, he was under the influence of this dark presence to write a horror story for it so it can gain power and escape through his words. However, in a last-ditch effort, he got a little bit of himself back, wrote in the author Thomas Zane to act as sort of his guide, and managed to escape, and that's where we start the game, with his manuscript flying to the breeze, basically giving out all the events that are going to happen in the game before they happen, because they're predestined to happen now. And he's written himself in as the protagonist in the story. The catch is he can't just write a story where he wins without any effort or explanation, because that happened with Thomas Zane, and his girlfriend ended up being possessed and becoming the current avatar of the Dark Presence. Whenever there's a hole in a story, the Dark Presence can basically fill it in from there, like an editor would, which means it can poison a story to fit its own ends, and Alan can't let that happen. So he creates this really convoluted story he has to live through while he has amnesia, while trying to get up to speed on it. And things get even weirder when you hit this area called the what was it, like the full light
The
room or
well-lit
something
room.
like that. That's it. And he opens a box that holds the key to his victory, and it's a page written by Thomas Zane talking about how he enters the story. So Alan Wake may have been invented by the person he thought he invented.
Welcome to an existential crisis to end all existential crisis.
Yes, the basic idea of Alan Wake is that it's trying to be a series about what it's like to be creative and create something. All the other people you meet who have had significant past with the Dark Presence, except for Breaker, who it's never really explained what because she doesn't seem to have any idea what this is, but she does know weird shit. But characters like the old gods of Asgard, those guys have actually been influenced by the darkness before, and it made their songs give them real, actual godlike power. Of course, you have Thomas Zane, I mentioned. I think there was a few others.
Yeah, there was an artist that
But basic-
never really gets a scene, but there's an artist in Emil Hartman's.
Oh yeah, he's like, yeah. When you go to Hartman's place, he's drawing all these pictures of things that have happened and will happen. Yeah, and you find the room full of them.
But it's an easy detail to notice because also in there's the message from Alice trying to recruit Dr. Hartman to, and then you hear that, and then you understand that, oh, the kidnapper edited the message from this message, because the whole thing is they think that the first half of the game is that after you wake up is that a kidnapper has Alice, and she keeps playing sound cues, but once you get there, you figure out that this is a trick by Emil Hartman to lure him so he can pick you up and put him in his asylum so he can have more famous people to work on, because Emil Hartman is kind of an asshole who has a god complex and wants to be the doctor that fixes all the creative people, and that, gives him this egotistical, smarmy shithead aura about him that never leaves.
The one interesting thing about him is I think his motivations beyond that are generally better than most of the characters who know about the darkness. Like, when you kind of get down to it, Wake is a bit selfish. It's something that really gets challenged in American Nightmare, but I'll get to that in a sec. But what Hartman seems to want is generally to make things better for everyone. He just wants to be the one who gets a sense of satisfaction for doing it because, egotistical ass. But Wake is just interested in his own current issue of saving his wife at the start, at least at that point, and then he becomes an actual hero as time goes on.
Yeah, once he realizes what he's doing. I played the creator's commentary track for a little bit until they just got too technical and it's everything. But the first thing they said is the creators come into the game and just say, he's kind of a dick. He is impulsive with spikes of aggression, is what I put in my notes, because he generally tries to be a decent person, but there are moments when there's pressure put on him and he doesn't react to it well. Like when he finds out that the Cabin in the Lake is for him to fix his writer's block, and Alice set this all up, he gets insanely mad. I mean, I maybe not insanely mad, but he gets really mad, and then he trots off and walks away, and he's kind of an asshole about it. And that's where he is at the start of this game. And he generally has to get a better feeling about himself, his writing, and how to write, how to balance your life, and how to deal with this unexpected fame that you get. Because that's the thing too. He has problems with parties and paparazzi and all sorts of things that you find out about the game, and it always sets him in a cranky mood, and he becomes a heavy drinker at times, and you see some flashbacks to that where the goal is to find headache medicine and sunglasses, and then you run into your wife who said you were supposed to be home at this time and you came in at 8 in the morning. So you get a little bit about that, and it's, you know, it's this big horror story where he's trying to figure out how not to let this darkness in, but it's also about him trying to figure out his own shit. It kind of reminded me of Adaptation, which was the Charlie Kaufman screenplay where he wrote himself into the movie, and he's trying to write this book about flowers, but he can't figure out how to write it, and then he doesn't want to take this standard thing, and then eventually he creates this twin named Donald who does all the standard things, and he makes the stupidest movie ever, but everybody loves it. It's called The Three, and it's like there's a serial killer, there's the cop, and then there's the cop's girlfriend, and they're all the same person. And every time he tries to explain how this movie shouldn't work, people just brush him off. So that it's about this problem, except they go off in two different directions at the end. Charlie Kaufman has to admit, like, he says all the things he doesn't want in the movie, and he doesn't want drug dealing, he doesn't want chase scenes, and all people learning life lessons, and all of the things happen in the movie at the end. But Alan Wake kind of goes another direction with it, in just learning to be okay with yourself and learning to be okay with the circumstances around you, in some sense. But Dark.
Oh my God! It's Evangelion.
It kind of is.
It even ends on like a sort of Ganex ending for the main story, where he's just at the typewriter, and it's just like, it's not a lake, it's an ocean.
And then
it's kind of
first. Sorry.
Oh, they reference that in the American Nightmare trailers. One of the trailers ends with Mr. Scratch directly mocking that line. I mean, like, it's a perfect encapsulation of what a shitbag he is.
Let's see here.
But yeah, this is very much a personal story, but it touches up on a lot of way bigger ideas, including the entire philosophy of determinism, which I'm going to just go nuts about in a moment. But I want to point out the importance of some of the characters, especially Barry, because I think he's the single most important character for Wake's character, because it shows just how far he's come as a person. Because when you start and first meet Barry, Wake is very dismissive of him. They're apparently like childhood friends, but Wake doesn't seem to like him much, thinks little of him. But as time goes on, Barry becomes a genuine compatriot, and you actually start seeing why they were friends in the first place. And like, he becomes more than just a comic relief sidekick, and like an actual person you want to see make it through this. And I'm just amazed they did that with the guy who was introduced as the fat guy from New Jersey.
Yeah, and he's an asshole to everybody he first meets, because I've known from some guys from New York like this, where they are just looking for an opportunity. They oh god, they just want their, how can I profit off of you? That's the first thing they think of, and maybe everything comes secondary. And they might be decent people, but the first things first is, what am I getting out of talking to you?
One thing I noticed is that since you're playing this game in the concept that at some point Alan Wake wrote all of these people a certain way, you start learning more about Wake himself by reading into how they progress through the story. And if you know, like, Nightingale's whole story, he suddenly becomes way more sympathetic, even though he is an antagonist in the game. Like, it's partly about Wake trying to see people more as the initial impression and trying to see depth to them. He even does this a bit with Hartman, only a bit. Like, trying to point out that Hartman may actually be trying to do good, it's just for the wrong reasons. Stuff like that. And then, of course, you have ridiculous characters just pop up, like the Anderson twins, who, like, cause a fucking riot at the mental institution.
Which is how you escape.
Yeah, that's probably more like a way to just write a way out of a story and entertain. If it's one thing I think Wake's good at the start of the game, it's entertaining an audience. It's why his crime novels were so popular. But this story he's writing now is trying to be something much more than that, and of course that's Lake doing that himself with this game, so laters.
Yeah, I find the people who really thought this game was stupid really liked the first couple chapters and then drifted off when it came to the meta narrative and what it was really about. They just really wanted this grand horror adventure, and then they got into this guy's head, and I suppose the way the narrative is handled, like, it's kind of hack writing, because he's to get hints on where you're supposed to go or what you're supposed to do, Alan will talk out loud in monologue about the power was out. I needed to find this generator to get it back on, and the light was gone. The darkness would be coming soon. I needed to run, and that's how he does it.
Yet another very Stephen Kingish thing. Stephen King loves to just write and write and write, and so you get a lot of details on characters and places and stuff because he just keeps writing about it. And this will occasionally go into like dialogue or explanations of what's happening, and you see a little bit of that happening in Alan Wake here. Those monologues are like a mix of that and just like old-fashioned noir monologues. So like, even though you're singing and know and have a good idea what you need to do, it's still telling you because Wake's writing. That's what he does. And
that's kind of his style too. It fits with his style because he used to be, a kind of hacky crime writer who got popular. And I took an entire semester of crime fiction, so I've read a whole bunch of it, and it's pretty accurate.
Oh boy, those monologues.
I would be really interested to know which parts of the game you may not have liked. Because it is still one of my favourite games, I really loved it. But I have written down a few little bits where I'm like...
The scene in when you're escaping from the asylum and you turn on the TV and a full-length car commercial that appears during a sequence where a giant metal ball is trying to crush you. I'm not going to include the scene at the start of episode 1 where the phone hits the screen and shows, like, I think the Verizon logo, because I actually laughed at that.
The first DLC, yeah. This game was probably way over budget and went way too long, so it had to have a lot of corporate help. So there's Verizon, there are the Duracell, the Energizer batteries. The batteries are very well rendered. They look pristine, which is in stark contrast to the rest of the background, which is, everything looks good, but it's more generic. They didn't put, unless it's like Alan Wake's books, they don't put a whole lot of detail in it, but they have to do it on the Duracell, and then he drives a Lincoln to Bright Falls, and you can very see the LK logo or whatever that is. And yeah, the Ford commercial airs twice in the asylum. There are two opportunities to do that. Like, once is when you wake up in the asylum, and if you wander off for a little bit, you can find that TV and turn it on. And it's a very bad moment for this ad, because you're just waking up and you're wondering, is this real? Is he just imagining this in his head and it's a car accident? Oh, look, Ford ad. Anyway.
I think we all know what the biggest problem in the game is, though. Because I've got like a few little gripes, like how I got halfway through episode 3 and I kind of thought, this game really has a thing for spooky forests. I wouldn't mind some other surroundings. And you do get a nice variety of surroundings after that, so it was a kind of wish granted moment. And also, I said that it being episodic, it stopped me from getting bored. In episode 6, the final one, about 15 minutes before the final boss, I didn't know it was going to be the final boss, I quit. And had to come back to it later, because I'd been playing for 2.5 hours, and at the beginning of it, it was like, go to Cauldron Lake! And 2.5 hours later, it was just like, you're still on the way to Cauldron Lake! And I just didn't feel like I'd done anything. But the biggest problem, obviously, and I'm sure that you will both agree, is that there just aren't enough collectibles in this game.
Oh.
I've got a little list down. You've got 91 manuscript pages, another 15 manuscript pages in nightmare mode, 100 coffee thermoses, 30 hidden weapons chests, 25 signs to read, 11 radio shows to listen to, 14 TV shows to watch, 12 can pyramids to shoot down, and in the DLC episodes, 10 alarm clocks to collect, 6 cardboard standees to hunt down, and 10 Night Springs video games to pick up, and that's just not enough.
No, absolutely not.
Not at all.
We need to find 100 gym jams to reach, like, the castle of the witch that the racist YouTube man really likes. The one with the parrot.
Oh. I like how, like, it's not enough to say the angry racist YouTube man. You gotta be like, which one?
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
the
they also don't
the
deserve to
Swedish
be
one or the
named.
other one? I'm sure that Dark is going to cringe a bit at this comparison, because other than this and the fact that they're episodic, there's nothing really in common with it. But even though the themes in the game are very strong and the story is very strong, it is still a game that, in some instances, wants to be played and enjoyed as a game. And the game I'm going to compare it to is Life is Strange.
Get out.
Because in Life is Strange, there's 10 collectibles per episode. There's these hidden photos that you can take. And if you miss one, you can go back to an episode and you can choose to replay any of the scenes. And it's split up into like 10 different scenes per episode. And they'll even tell you which collectibles you've missed and where. Like, oh, here's a scene outside the school. You could have taken 2 photos here, but you didn't. Whereas Alan Wake, it's just like, you're missing a coffee thermos. Good fucking luck. Just, which one of these 6 episodes? Oh, and don't worry, you can pick where in the episode to go. You can be the first 5 minutes, and then that also includes the next hour of gameplay. Or, you can be this next section, which is 2 hours of gameplay. So... yeah, I missed a coffee thermos right at the end of the very first chapter, because I found it, but I couldn't get to it because I was out of ammo and it's really far away and you can't get there without enemies spawning. And then finding out, you have to do the whole thing again to go back there.
Yeah, I just did the manuscripts because was interesting to me sometimes. And that's a compliment to the game because I do not like looking at extra lore on top of what the storytelling is supposed to do. It's just like, if I need all of this to understand your game, you didn't do your job. But the way the manuscripts were handled were really interesting and really well done, and really captured like the mindset and, you know, how freaky this actually is.
Yeah, they definitely did a lot more for the game than like finding fucking audio logs in a BioShock game. Picking up an audio log in BioShock Infinite. Something racism, something racism, something.
And we're back to YouTubers.
Oh, by the way, they went to the future and stole Everybody Wants to Rule the World. But we don't want to hear about that part. It's like all of the interesting things of BioShock Infinite are on the side, but I have to deal with the most uninteresting, both sides are terrible narrative bullshit on Infinite. And that's the one they're going with. There's like, this game should be enthralling me, and it's just boring me, and that's, I don't know.
While we're on the, if we can get back on topic, I like to get into the themes because, boy oh boy, this is basically adult Homestuck.
Oh, he's getting into his Homestuck and his philosophy. We better let him go.
Oh, look at the time.
Don't worry, this
Get
isn't.
going.
Don't worry, I'm not going to go too much into this because I can't make a ton of direct comparisons besides Dr. Scratch and Mr. Scratch. I mean, obviously. They're even, like, the same... They have the same personality. Okay. But basically, Homestuck, at its core, sets itself up as, like, some sort of game-based webcomic, but it's more about how media shapes who we are as people. About how we take it in and how it informs our views, and it shows both the good and the bad of that in different extremes. I mean, the ultimate bad guy of Homestuck ends up being the prelude to Gamergate. I'm not joking. His entire motivation is that he just really has a lot of spite in him towards everyone who's happy, and just keeps doing things a difficult way. And after a teenager beats him up, he's like, "Fuck it, I'm gonna destroy everything." That's
Back
it.
to racist YouTubers again. Just can't get away from them.
But yeah, the Alan Wake is playing with a lot of similar ideas to that, even down to giving one character an ability to affect the actual reality of the story they're in. Like in Homestuck, it's a late game thing where the main character, John, gets a sort of time travel power, except it's not. It's actually like retconning power. The actual ability to completely change the continuity of the comic through time travel instead of like the multiple timeline Doom bullshit that was happening before. And that's kind of what's going on in Alan Wake, because he's directly changing everything. The character, the story is directly changing the story itself. And it's all about how he's using this process to learn more about him. And from what we hear from other characters, we get an idea of who they are about the media they reference and talk about. Like Barry references really popular stuff, various fiction he knows about from his job. Agent Nightingale constantly talks about different famous horror authors. It's little things like that. Or like how Dr. Hartman views different creatives and their different... Like how he doesn't like video game makers.
Even though the Night Springs
you-
video game is all over his asylum.
Well, he has to give him something.
And the board
to
game,
do.
too.
You also get different ideas about how the creatives write. Like Thomas Zane, from what you can gather from him, is like a more poetic author. He's not interested in hard concepts. He's interested in like feelings and emotion, and that ends up being his downfall for the type of story he was writing. It's the opposite with Alan Wake, who is a very modernist sort of writer. He looks at the mechanics of the story, and he constantly talks about this in the game itself, and he creates around that to try to make something very airtight that can't be undone logically. And then, of course, you have Odin and Tor Anderson, who are just like all emotion all the time. So they can't really do much besides fight. Like, for them, it's just like doing the one thing and getting it accomplished, and that's it. It's just like all those cool little details. And then when you get to American Nightmare, it gets really kicked into overdrive, like Mr. Scratch suddenly turning into like some sort of pulpy film horror thing. He actually rewrites one of the characters I mentioned from that game, Zarina Valdia. He possesses her and makes her like a horny
Kind of makes her a groupie who is really into him.
yeah, pretty much. And when you get that off of her, she's just a regular person who's running a film festival. Emma Sloan is more gimmicky, and that reflects more on Alan Wake when he originally wrote this story, where he was still very inexperienced and relying heavily on stereotypes. But that ends up being her key to getting out of the time loop that the game is based around, because thanks to her smoking so much weed, she retains a lot more knowledge of what's happening in each time loop than everyone else, and actively works to break it. And then there's Dr. Meadows, who's like the most interesting character to me, because she's the first one in both of these games who's like, wait, you're writing all of this so it happens. Doesn't that mean the people who die because of this are dead because of you? And then he's like, oh.
Yeah.
And then there's like an actual interesting discussion about this that basically dives right into determinism. The idea is, unlike, it argues that free will does not exist and that we are a series of reactions to what's done to us. It's really hard to explain because everyone always defaults to like the religious version of that, which is because God said so. But no, it's like we are only who we are because of what others and what the world does to us and how we react to it. And he's basically arguing that he's not really affecting the free will of people, he's just guiding them on a certain path, a certain fate. And it's, when you think about it, it's not much different than like the basic idea of this philosophy. And there's never really an answer to this, and it's actually left a little vague if these people even still exist after he's done writing the story, for a little existentialist dread. So you're like wondering just how much of a hero he is after that. But then again, you would look at Mr. Scratch and you think, okay, he's probably the hero here.
Oh dear.
I love Mr. Scratch because he's basically a more cartoonish version of like Stephen King's most famous villain, Randal Flagg. He was the bad guy from The Stand. He was based off an actual real life criminal who, like, I'm trying to remember, I think it was like Donald DeFreeze. Was that it?
It's not ringing a bell.
It was he kidnapped a famous, the daughter of a famous Hollywood star and basically brainwashed her into being his accomplice. Oh,
the situation is familiar, but I'm not remembering the names from it.
Well, the idea behind Randal Flagg is he's a character somewhat aware, especially in The Dark Tower, that he's a character in a story. Spoilers for The Dark Tower, everyone in the main cast finds out they're not real and actually meet Stephen King.
Oh dear.
The Dark Tower is fucking ridiculous. But basically, Randal Flagg lashes out at the world because he understands that there's not a place for him in it. And a creator who would write a world like this where he can't succeed, and one where his origin was so painful, makes him think there's no reason for him to do anything other than cause more pain. And Mr. Scratch is very much like that, except he also has this need to constantly be seen as more important than he is. He knows he's doomed by the end of the story, and he's just desperately trying to fight against that fate and trying to just will himself into being the actual real important character. But he's not, and he's constantly aware of this. Like all his grandstanding and these live action videos he sends, you can kind of make out at times that the facade breaks a little. Like one of the first ones is when he's actually trying to make a deal or some sort, but he keeps getting interrupted by people next door. And he's constantly making ridiculous threats about what he'd do to Alice or Barry. And it's very clear he's doing this more for himself than to get in your head.
One of my favourite fourth wall breaking things in all media is you mentioned the promotional videos that actually feature Ilka Villi, which is the body actor of Alan Wake, playing Mr. Scratch in live action. And he's reading positive reviews for Alan Wake's American Nightmare to try and persuade people to buy it, and they're all saying like, Mr. Scratch is incredible, I especially love Mr. Scratch, and he's like, thank you, I'll be sure to make some time to make sure that you know just how grateful I am. But the one thing that genuinely just made me think, okay, I can't believe they went for that, and I can't believe it kind of worked, is that one of the reviews is just, Mr. Scratch is an amazing villain, played by the Finnish actor Ilka Villi. And then you just get 30 seconds of Mr. Scratch going like, Ilka Villi? What? Is that... I'm not... There's not an actor playing me, it's me. Isn't it? And he goes through like 30 seconds of like a cross between silent and confused noises and just kind of having an on-screen realization that like, so wait, if there's an actor playing me, who am I? And it kind of works.
American Nightmare is really interesting in terms of tone because it's very clearly like two different writers competing against each other within the same story, and one of them's just reusing his old work, which is vastly different from his current style. So it's like a melding of three different styles, and it's kind of a mess, but it's like that on purpose.
American Nightmare, you go to these three places, a desert restaurant / gas station next to an oil rig, and then you go to a observatory, and then you go to a movie theater, and all of it is loosely based off of an episode of Night Springs Alan Wake did, which was his first work. And
What about the Champion of
the
Light
Champion of
and
Light.
the...
Oh, was it? Did I get the order screwed up? Maybe, but
But yeah, basically he rewrote this story to fit into some area in Nevada, since the town of Night Springs is a very vague concept. You can fit mostly anywhere depending on the terrain of the story. So he wants to escape the darkness, but the problem is that now Mr. Scratch is an avatar of darkness and he has to deal with that asshole. And it's when the game ends, it's not entirely clear, but he seems to still be trapped to the connection with the world of the Dark Presence. But there's like a hope spot. The way he defeats Mr. Scratch is that he writes an ending that's thematically resonant towards him, where he sees a home movie his wife made. And it's not, and the reason he loses, while it's technically the light that kills Mr. Scratch, the reason he loses the first 2 times is because he doesn't get all the details right to create that moment, that thematic moment that's not only like strong in the sense of it creates a strong plot, but strong in the sense that it creates a strong emotional impact. Like he's trying to write the right story in order to defeat this thing. Something that the darkness can't fight against, which isn't just like plot construction, but the actual genuine soul of the writer. Boy, I went just a little on a tangent.
no, that's
there.
fine. It's one of the things is Alan Wake's American Nightmare is a lot more interesting when you look at the stuff on the side than you look at the stuff of the actual game, because the game itself is very standard, and a lot of what you do is grunt work that expands the time. Like, you have to get this valve, you have to get this battery, you have to get this I forget what the last thing was. Oh, the CD. And you have to play it at this moment, and then it
And then a rock song plays and a
crashes,
satellite
and then you have to
crashes
escape
into
the
an oil
fire.
tower.
And then it's very basic. It's a lot of grunt work. It's mostly the most uninteresting parts of some of these games you play, and which is my biggest problem with American Nightmare. Also, it's a time loop where you repeat it twice. I understand why they did it, but doing the tedious tasks in the game, and then having to go back and do them 2 more times got a little grating on me. Although I did enjoy everything along the side.
For me, I actually really like the combat. I understand your complaints, but the fact that I got to fight more things was actually a reason for me to want to do more of these things, because the combat in this game feels so much better than it did in the previous game. Like, you don't tire out so easily. You get a lot of really cool and fun weapons. Like, the sawed-off shotgun is so fun. And you get to experiment around with your own play style. You get more aggressive and complicated enemies to play around with. It's like an interesting proof of concept for a more action-oriented Alan Wake sequel. And
You get to play around and pick your own kind of style of play right up until the moment when you reach the crossbow and realise it's the best weapon in the game, bar none, and that there's literally no reason to ever use anything else.
Until you run out of ammo.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so I always stick with the sawed-off shotgun.
Every time I see a nail gun in the game, I have to remember everybody who has to be that guy who says, a nail gun doesn't work like that. Because that's... anytime a nail gun is brought up, there's somebody who's like, that's not how a nail gun works.
I just have a really dumb, unsophisticated thing to say, but I was just like, I like how the manuscript pages were marked on the map.
Oh, yes.
It made it easier
Oh,
for me to find them.
Oh yeah, we haven't even mentioned the radio talk shows you can listen to in these games. I think it's kind of important because in the first game they're a good way to get an idea of what's going on in the area, but in American Nightmare they get kind of existential and interesting, especially that one where the guy is questioning the nature of existence, and then the like if this is all predestined, then what's the point of doing anything? And then the announcer starts debating on him, and his voice starts changing into the announcer of like the Night Springs TV show, and gets all existential and horrifying. And then he goes back to normal, and he's like, "Is that all you need?" And he's like, yeah. Yeah, like it's a much funnier game than the first game, and it actually works. What I really like about this franchise is the way it's set up. You can go to all sorts of different genres, and it will fit perfectly with the character and the stories and themes that play, because Alan Wake at its core isn't a full-on horror story. It's a story about creating. And I think that's something a lot of people miss out on, which is weird because it gets very, 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 very obvious about it constantly.
Yeah. And it's also about when you create and become well known and how to deal with that. It's another part of that, which I think is very fits into sound like it's like, wait, this got popular and people know me now? What? How did this happen?
Oh my god, it's just like that one episode of OKKO where Rad made the meme. Honestly, that episode's really good because he makes a popular video and everyone doesn't care about his actual process of making it and just latches onto one word he said in it, make it a meme, and he gets frustrated that everyone's a fucking idiot. And then Hollywood comes and they make a movie based off that one meme, and it's terrible, and they throw it in a volcano. So, OKKO is very good.
Yeah, I probably should watch that. There's too much stuff I have to watch right now.
But yeah, I love Alan Wake. I really liked American Nightmare, and I just really wish they had gotten to continue with this series instead of making fucking Quantum Break. It's like a very by the numbers sci-fi TV show NBC would pick up after they canceled Heroes to try and capitalize on a new Heroes and not getting white heroes.
Or it's one of those in the 90s where Star Trek was a successful syndicated program, so they made a whole bunch of sci-fi syndicated programs like Time Tracks with an X, and nobody remembers it. It's one of those shows.
Well, apparently you do.
Yeah. You know what? You want to know how I remember first encountered William Shatner? I didn't recognize him through Star Trek or T.J. Hooker or anything else. Tech War, the TV series, where he played the boss man. So I watched a lot of that shit when I was a kid. Tech War, based on the novels by William Shatner. That's all you need to know.
I think the next time I do a Halloween special for this podcast, I'm gonna make everyone play something from Suda 51 to just really fuck with them. Honestly, I could pick anything pre No More Heroes 2 and it would fit perfectly with the Halloween theme. Even the first No More Heroes, which ends up being fucking madness.
What we could always do is play Silent Hill Shattered Memories, and then we could talk about how the game psychoanalyzed us.
And then we can talk about how the writer of the game is kind of...
Oh, that too. And they also did Silent Hill 0, which is terrible, even though people try to make it not terrible. It is.
And I'm over here with the dunce cap, just like, I like Outlast. I like the part where the big guy goes.
Oh, there's a lot of crazy out there shit in Outlast.
I like the part with the penis.
The penis, yes.
That's my favorite.
The penis twins.
You're gonna have to be more specific.
I don't want to make myself sound even more unintelligent than I already have done.
My favorite game is Outlast 2. It has the camera with the found footage. And the sculpt peoples and the murder.
Yeah. And it's about the church.
Than 1. That's why it's better than Outlast 1.
It's very deep, like Final Fantasy X.
It's got like the church, but the logo for Outlast has the cross upside down, so it's about how this church is bad.
Even though that's not actually considered a taboo symbol in the Christian myth, but is mistaken as so because of exorcism movies created by Hollywood.
You sound too smart. Get out. Burn
They
the
found me
witch.
out.
Sounds like you need some more of that moonshine.
God, I'm just imagining everyone playing like not Killer 7 but the Silver Case, because it's like if Killer 7 was somehow even more esoteric and also hilarious. I think the translation was done partly by Grasshopper Studio themselves. So there's a lot of weird translation choices, like your main character being nicknamed Big Dick. And at one point in the game, a reporter is asking about it, and he says, "Hey, what happened to that slapping nuts guy? Who the fuck is that?" "Oh, you mean Big Dick." Oh, and there's also... But then there's things that are very clearly, accurately translated, and I could totally see them being said by Suda51, like the scene where the guy is showing the guy at the bar a picture of his turtle, and it's like, "Here's my turtle, isn't he cute?" "Oh my god, what? He's hideous. You motherfucker, he's smiling. That's smiling? You've hurt my feelings. I'm going home." On, of course, the scene where they talk about whittling and then compare it to fucking. The Silver Case is incredible, guys.
I'll get around to it.
Here's a picture of my turtle. That turtle is ugly. You come in here and call my turtle ugly? You dandy fuck. And then the men's hair club just attacks him.
I think we're running out of think juice.
Yeah.
No shit. Well, this has been fun. I'm not sure how to end this because
I have my closing thing. We do closing thoughts. I spent like 5 minutes on Google being like, what rhymes with Alan Wake?
Okay, go for it.
Well, I've kind of spoilt the premise of this now, but you can tell you what, I wrote like a little summary of my thoughts on Alan Wake and my thoughts on American Nightmare, and I want to see if you can tell which one I spent longer on. If you'd like to take a break from Solid Snake or Nathan Drake, Alan Wake really takes the cake with its fast-paced, camera-shaking, double-taking, groundbreaking take on headache, heartache, and heartbreak. It's great, so don't wait. Get this hyper-caffeinated, not outdated tale of Lovecraftian fate, hate, and Cauldron Lake on your plate before it's too late, for God's sake. American Nightmare is also pretty good.
Yeah, that about sums it up.
I mean, yeah.
All right. Go on, Joe.
My final thoughts is, I really love this game. It's kind of one of those things that this is my hole. This was made for me, where it's kind of like Blade Runner 2049, where it's a different hole, but it was still made for me. But this is a horror movie that. Not horror movie, horror game that is really takes a lot of the things I love and understands what they're about and doesn't just try to copy it, and it tries to be its own thing and adds its own thoughtful stuff about it. It's a little straightforward, which is fine because I played 20 hours of open world Deadly Premonition. While I really like the guts of Deadly Premonition, I don't like the gameplay of it so much. It gets really dull, but this one it's just long enough, even though you're still running down through the trees, and it does get interesting, and it does is able to make a game that is able to last long enough to get all of its thoughts in. With American Nightmare, it's a really impressive game to think about, not so much to play. There is the more action oriented, and it is kind of more fun, but it kind of calls attention to its own tediousness, which is why I don't like it more than I do, or I haven't played it more than I do. Because I played Alan Wake through 5 times. A couple of those was I play games for other people who don't like playing scary games, but they want to see them. So, and it's a really good one of those, because it actually has stuff to think about other than, oh god, that was an intense experience.
I just realized something very unnerving.
What's that?
Yep.
Alan Wake came out after Alone in the Dark 2008, so technically it ripped that game off.
I thought that that's like the Bizarro universe Alone in the Dark 2008, where all of the weird concepts worked.
Evil tornadoes, darkness,
Using
light.
light.
The main character says fuck.
that bit where Alan comes face to face with Alice, and he just goes, "I don't have your manuscript. Fuck you anyway."
Driving around on the things.
Are we?
Oh, and the episodic format.
I was
Boy,
I was
that's
confused. Are
depressing
we
thought.
talking about the Uwe Boll movie or the remake game?
There's so many bad Alone in the Dark games.
I didn't even like the first one very much, but oh gasp. Well,
Yeah, you're right.
That wasn't a gasp, it was a ghost
okay.
again.
I hate the fixed camera in Alone in the Dark, and if you get in the wrong point with anything you're battling with, you are fucked. And that just burns my toast real bad.
All right, everyone, you heard it here. Alan Wake is great. Alone in the Dark sucks ass. And if you want to watch the Halloween episode of Heavy Storms, I would highly suggest you do so, because we talk about the Boob Dragon song, and I don't think I need to say anything else.
You leave my mother out of this.
The next regular episode of Heavy Storms will be focused on Cersei Celestial Legend, which I did not know was made by the writer of Fujiki Yuki. God,
It's a detail that slipped my mind.
hell. You bastard. And as for IndieCent, we will hopefully be back later to talk about Chantilly's and complain about that fucking crab boss. And then I will talk about Hoonie Pop and the game that directly references email con at the very beginning of it.
All right.
It's kind well, have a happy Halloween. And shit, I never know how to end this series. Okay, Elmo, say something stupid. Did you make another kid cry lately?
Yes! But on purpose this time, so it's okay. I can finish by saying something really stupid. Because, even though I'd heard about it, I'd never thought about it in that much depth. Remember when Dark was talking about how that theory of, people, they just respond to things. They don't actually have choices. It's all, you just respond to the things that you've been given. And he mentioned
Shut up, nerd.
And he mentioned that, like religious people say, oh, well, that means it's all God's will. I had honestly never thought too deeply about it, but now I just have this image of this mythical being like, Elmo, you will go to planet Earth. I don't know why he's an alien. Elmo, you will live on planet Earth. And I go, yes, God, what is my purpose? And he just looks at me and goes, you're gonna masturbate to fucking everything. Everything. I'm like, but what if I don't want to? And he's like, you're gonna fucking do it, okay? Just fucking go for it. It's 5 in the morning. Bye!
Oh, and there's our
We
M.
don't-
Night Shyamalan plot twist.
Oh my god, we need to end this now. Someone call the police.
I hear them outside,
And we'll stop.
but then again, I'm always next to a fire station / police station, so...
If this goes on for 2 hours and 30 minutes because we can't find an ending, I'm sorry, everyone.
I have loads
God.
more stories about masturbation.
Oh my god, Rick, they can't find an endpoint for this joke. Are we gonna be here forever? Oh jeez. Racist YouTube man with a parrot crashes through the walls. Black
stuck in a
people have
time
the
loop.
crime gene. Run, Morty!
Oh god, we're stuck in a time loop. We're gonna just have to keep going around and re-recording the same 3 parts of the podcast over and over.
I'm just gonna stop talking. That will end it.
free. You will need the witch's cabin key. Find the lady of the light, go mad with the night. That's how you reshape destiny. And now to see your love set free, you will need the witch's cabin key. Find the lady of the light, still raving in the night. That's